Hello, welcome to the forum. I'm your host, Renee Pinnell, founder of Kaleidoscope, a professional network for the immersive industry. Today we're talking to Winslow Porter, the third, co-founder of New Reality, Inc., and one of the artists and creators behind some of my favorite work like Giant and Tree. So welcome to the show, and I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Thanks. Well, it's lovely to be here, Renee. Yeah, it seems like, we've been also, I feel like we got our start around the same time. So it's really great to see, sort of where like everything is from the industry, but also, personally, how much has happened in those last like 4.5 years, 5 years.
Oh man, it's such a blur. Yeah, I got married. I had a kid. I moved to the wilds of Oregon.
Yeah.
It's been a trip, man, and I'm really glad that we've become friends over the years. You're one of the first people that I became buddies with in the industry. So
Yeah.
And it's really just because you've got fucking cool shirts. You've got the best style. I love that shirt.
I really appreciate it. It's also because it's like, it's every day. If you don't wear something like at least like breezy, you might melt in New York, especially in this area with all the asphalt. But yeah, we first got to know each other back in the clouds days. Back in 2014.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot that you'd been working on that project with James and God, who's the other? Alexander and
Jonathan Menard.
Jonathan Menard. Yeah.
But what's crazy
Boy, that
is
was a cool project.
Yeah, that was such a trip.
Can you give a quick description of Clouds just for people on the line that don't know what Clouds was? Because I think that was a pivotal project because it was kind of right at that moment before VR was a thing. Give an overview.
Sure thing. Yeah, it was really an honor to be brought onto that project. I was a producer at the Barbarian Group, mostly working on interactive campaigns, some video stuff, but also web stuff, banner ads, all the fun stuff that you do if you're working in the agency side of things. Can you still hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Great.
I just made you big.
Okay, there. Oh yeah. And so then, James and Jonathan approached me because of Julia Kagansky, who was right at that time. She was the editor at large at the Creators Project, and she thought that I would be a good fit to help them produce the project. They'd already gotten
and Julia went on to be the founding director at the New Inc., right?
Exactly, yeah. And we were part of the second cohort there. James was part of the first. A lot of you have Eliza McNitt, also the neurospeculative Afrofeminism crew, Hyphen Labs, Sensorium, Graham as well. There's a ton of people that came out of that program, so that was really good. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the lovely thing about Clouds was that it was the first project to really use the volumetric video system that now Scatter, that has since become Scatter. It was really something I think that no one had ever seen before. That the way to capture it, but also the look and feel of it.
And just so people know, the thing that he's talking about is using Kinect camera and a digital SLR to give you this beautiful look that a lot of projects have gone on to use, like Vestige, Terminal 3, just a bunch of. There's a long list of really, really great projects that have now used that, but Clouds was the first.
Yeah, and it first started out as, from a hackathon at Carnegie Mellon, which was before my time. But then it was footage of Golan Levin, and I actually saw the footage when I was at exhibiting a work in Guadalajara, and neither James or Jonathan was there, but it was this big projection of Golan shot, semi-volumetrically from the front using a Kinect 1 and I believe a 5D Mark II. But just being able to go around the footage that was, normally sort of locked in place with a traditional camera, but because of the depth that was applied to it, then you're able to get all these different perspectives, sort of this different look, these amazing, very futuristic effects that come, when you're dealing with point cloud data. So there was it was just something that, I had never seen. I remember Adam Harvey sent me a link to it as well. Adam Harvey's another artist who primarily works in counter surveillance technology and art. But it was something that was really a buzz in the scene. And as soon as I connected the two dots, I realized that, yeah, it would be silly for me to pass up that opportunity to work on this project. So after a glass of wine near where I worked at the Barbarian Group at the time, maybe a couple glasses, we determined that, that we, this would be a really great project to work on, to collaborate together and, begin to really build a solid team of artists. A lot of these artists who've been, who have since, made a lot of great work, like Ellie Zananiri, who won an Emmy for 0 Days as the tech director. And, Bradley Munkowitz, who's done a lot of amazing work in the field, Patricio Gonzalez Vivo, you have Kyle McDonald, Lauren McCarthy, who were interviewed in the piece, and Zach Lieberman, the list goes on. It's a lot of sort of people, who are considered to be, sort of some of the really influential creative coders, thinkers, hackers in that space. So it was really amazing sort of taking it all in at the time. And it was also a project because I saw how much passion that everyone on the project had for, immersive media and also eventually VR.
And what the project was itself was, it was interviewing people that are sort of at the intersection of tech and art. So people like Aaron Koblin and who are some of the other, I mean, that's the only one that I can think of right now. But
well, there was also Memo was in the piece. You have John Maeda, you have Bruce Sterling. Yeah, I was mentioning Kyle and Lauren. Also Chantal Martin. People who also don't necessarily work directly in code, but are working with digital tools to help augment their craft, to help bring it to life. So it was
a very meta piece. It was about it was about this community talking about this this sort of emerging art field thing, and then there'd be these little moments where you'd sort of break out into these just pure pieces of art. So it was like interview mixed with weird digital art stuff, and you saw it. There was a headset version, but it wasn't primarily released as that, right? If I'm not mistaken, it was released as a 2D interactive piece, like more in a museum context.
Yes, we had two different versions, one for the headset and one for more of a PC, desktop. Also it can loop and has a storytelling engine. So yeah, you get to go, basically from different keywords into, one into another through interviews. And also instead of, cutting to B-roll, we're cutting to, 3D or like computational sketches of what they're talking about, say, flocking algorithms. Then we'd cut to a digital example of that. And if you have the headset on, then you're surrounded by it. And what was kind of an amazing thing is that a lot of these artists, this was right when the DK1 came out. So this was, the first ability for a lot of these artists to see their own work in 3D, but not just a locked 16:9 stereoscopic 3D, but in a fully, 360 3D. And that was something that, I think inspired a lot of people because, being able to put a second camera inside of a sketch, we saw the ability to really to bring this work, shed another light on it. And I think it really, sort of was like the aha moment for a lot of people working in the field. Definitely everyone on the team, we sort of got bit by the VR bug. And there's no cure, baby.
Yeah, she's a harsh mistress, but the heart wants what the heart wants. I think that project was seminal for a lot of folks, not just the people that worked on it. But for me, I think if I were to go back and see it now, I bet it would stand up quite well. I remember it being really, really impactful. And we curated it in the first world tour that Kaleidoscope did, which was a hassle because it didn't run. It was one of the more like heavy ones. Like the other ones were all Gear VR pieces. And we had like a specific computer dedicated just for clouds. That we had to get through customs in a bunch of different countries. But so you went from clouds to your next project, where you had a new collaborator. Milica was not part of clouds. Maybe you could talk about how you found Milica and how Giant was born.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I would say also after clouds, then I took those learnings to work on some commercial projects, working with Framestore and Hill Holiday on a Merrill project that was at Sundance in 2015, and Clouds was there the year before when there was only 2 other pieces. And then in 2015, there was maybe 12 pieces at Sundance, and almost every year it was doubling, at least at that point. Yeah. And then working on a piece also for the US Open, just sort of cutting my teeth, figuring out how to build teams, put things together, but also from working on all this projects that were other people's, really, like Milica was my friend from back when we were both editors here in New York at a place called Goldcrest. And we saw that, we would always, as soon as we met there, we realized that we had very similar tastes in music, in movies, and we wanted to collaborate. So we made a bunch of music videos together, mostly working with the band, the Brazilian Girls, who was based out in New York at the time.
And these are just traditional projects. None of these are like VR stuff, right?
No, but we tried to like always make them like, have like sort of the latest and greatest technology, whether it was like custom lights. Like one of them was using this Kinetic Sculpture that called Absolute Quartet that Absolute commissioned the artist like Jeff Lieberman and Dan Paluska. It was a Kinetic Sculpture that also made music. So that was kind of like this, this like also a moment where I was like, all this emerging technology can really do, if it involves the user or the participant, it can be a lot more interesting. It's more of a conversation. It's not just this sort of like passive sort of one stream of information. Instead, anytime you can involve somebody else and they can be a part of the project, or the project can almost be about them in a way, they can make it more personal, stages in that. And it was still, it's still relatively unexplored. But we'd always joked that our favorite directors had already made their greatest work, at an age younger than us. I think at the time we were like 26, just like silly things that we say to each other to motivate each other. And then
don't compare yourself to Orson Welles, because that you'll just get destroyed by that timeline.
No, I think time is sort of not as compressed now in many ways. But no, I mean, it was inspiring for us to sort of see what else was happening with people, and it really requires a project to want to make that move to do your own thing. It's one thing to start a studio. It's another thing to work on a project with that studio. And then, it gives you deadlines. And, actually, when we were on the phone for Giant with Sundance, they said one of the greatest thing we can give a filmmaker is a deadline. And for us, that was very true with that project.
Well, that was actually Giant, the first time that we talked, I think, in depth, was when you were prepping for Giant at Sundance, because I remember you describing it to me with the chair that had the like rumbling in it, and it was like I had no idea what the project was until I saw it like after Sundance that year. I think at what was that? I don't remember, some Technicolor office.
You saw it at NAB.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
Vegas.
Oh, that was so weird. NAB is so weird. I mean, yeah, I've never been to like a Giant Vegas conference before. And the whole thing was just fantastically strange. Acres and miles of indoor booths, it's like this alternate universe where people just live in little booths for a week.
You definitely get your steps in, to say the least.
Okay, so Giant was this project that came out in 2015, right? 16?
So we started it in 2015, and it was actually inspired by Milica's childhood growing up in Serbia. It's a war-torn country, the war-torn area, I should say, and then also from the NATO bombings. She was telling her friend Lizzie Donahue the story of growing up, and then Lizzie said, that sounds like a movie, and then Milica was also saying, it's hard for her to discuss it, so this was kind of a catharsis, revisiting these moments of her childhood, with her family, also witnessing what it was like for her sister, who was much younger.
And the project takes place in a basement between a family, a mother, a father, and a young girl. And they tell the girl that it's a giant that's shaking the house, when in fact it's bombings that are happening outside.
Exactly. And we wanted to be able to, because this is still happening all over the world, in many different countries. And for us right now, the way I know about it, at least, is through push notifications from my BBC News app, and it's very hard to get context or have any connection with it when it's on this little, when it's only like so many pixels on the screen, and there's no imagery. There's, for me, I can use my imagination to think about that, but it's really not connecting me with that place. It's hard for me to empathize with that. And empathy is a word that gets used a lot in VR, but I think it really has the potential, if done well, if done properly, to allow you to have that. And so for us, we wanted to imagine what it was like for a Western audience to be in a basement, to imagine what it was like to be caught in a conflict that they weren't responsible for, but ultimately that they were having to pay the consequences. Where they were witnessing what it's like to be sort of caught in this situation. And it's, it's a dialogue. The project starts with two hand puppets. It's the daughter and the mother's saying that she's the giant. That's how we introduce the character. And as slowly as the story progresses, we realize that there is no giant, but that the parents are trying to calm the daughter, and she already knows at the end that that's not the case. And you'll have to, no spoilers. It's available on Within if you want to see it, but it does have a tragic ending. And for us, that was really important to also to tell that story in the headset, but also what are the elements leading up to that? How do we create an environment where people feel comfortable to witness something that can be emotional? We also give them a trigger warning, letting them know, what the events that are going to be unfolding in the headset. So, people who are from, who grew up in Sri Lanka or in Lebanon, just to name a couple, said, actually, I lived with that growing up. I don't need to witness this again, and they opted out. Where other people were like, actually, after they went through, they said they grew up in a very similar situation, and for them, it was therapeutic to be able to see this from another perspective, to be there. And at the technology at the time, we were ideating it, and it sounds very, very agency. We were writing the concept in 2015 with scriptwriter Lizzie Donahue, Milica, and myself. And then we basically had 2 months once we got into Sundance to deliver the project. And it was, lots of different revisions and what was happening, but it was really important for us to make sure that, all those things leading up to the emotional content, were in lockstep. We also, in the other projects that I worked on from the agency side, had a lot of haptics involved. And it's important to consider what's happening, not just with the eyes and your ears, but also how do we involve other senses.
I think that was the first project I ever tried that involved haptics, and it was pretty simple haptic, but it was effective.
Yeah, I mean, what was interesting, Milica and I always like to say that we tried the Martian experience, which had a much bigger budget, and it had a D-box chair that had to have been tens of thousands of dollars, and that was like, kind of rocked you around like a theme park ride. But I think that there was a certain subtlety that was nice about our IKEA stool with a generic butt kicker, which is a gaming, something that the gaming community has embraced, is being able to feel the blasts more inside of like first person shooters. But how do we take the same technology and reuse it for a project about peace ultimately? And that's something that we're very very passionate about and focused as a company. How do we use these tools to tell stories that are becoming even more pressing? And we'll get into Tree as well, but just waking up again with news updates about the forest fires in Brazil. It's like people sending me 3 people this morning sent me emails or news articles about that too.
Yeah. That's how I started my day, was talking about the Brazilian, the Amazon on fire. It's just heartbreaking. Giant had from my perspective anyways, had a great reception. It seemed to, it premiered at Sundance. It played at a lot of other places. Why don't you talk about where that toured? Because and I might be wrong about this, but that you toured Giant quite a bit, but Tree you've toured like 10 times more, right? Like you've shown Tree like fucking everywhere.
Yeah, it's been, the nice thing about any of these, with Giant is kind of like laying down like a foundation. It's like there wasn't really any trans like American Railroad, where you knew your stops, where you could check in, you're like, this is a good town, I'm going to stop here and set up shop. It still feels very much like when we were involved in the early days, it felt very much like a circus, where you set up your tent, you show the people, you peddle your wares, you show them the big show, the spectacle, and then you move on to the next place, and you hope to meet as many people, and then those people also get inspired or get involved, and then you meet them at 2 years later or at the next stop even, because they're also now involved. But yeah, with Giant, it was very much started out with Sundance, and then we did a bunch of other film festivals. It was mostly film festivals in 2015, 2016 that were showing VR, and then it became more of a tech thing. And then it became, sort of like arts and tech. And then, there was an educational component involved, and universities were really excited about showing this. And, not just universities in the US, but, in Korea, in Colombia, in London, there was a lot of opportunities to be able to show these projects because, there were no rules, or if there were rules, they're being broken the next day, as far as cuts with camera, being able to give yourself a presence. And so I think the big difference is that, there was more, this sort of the market was in its infancy, and it was, being developed slowly. It was being nurtured by the tech companies, the creators, but, also the people who are curious about this content. And there still is, very much evolving. In many ways, it's very similar to what it was when we first started. There's just more of a sort of a cultural awareness, and things are cheaper, faster, and easier to use.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking to Ingrid Kopp yesterday, and just thinking back 5 years to how difficult it was to shoot anything or to distribute anything or to exhibit anything, it really has gotten quite a lot easier. Just lugging the equipment around, like the Oculus Go and the Oculus Quest, being able to do demos that quickly and that easily. Thinking back to, again, lugging around a whole computer system for clouds, that was it's just exhausting and difficult. And so in a lot of ways it has gotten quite a bit easier. In other ways it's still just as hard. So what did you learn from Giant, and how did that lead into Tree?
So we created Giant back when we were applying to the to Sundance, the Story Lab. Milica had the brilliant idea of, you're only in the industry, you're only as good as your next project. And so we're like, if the stars align and Giant is able to be made possible, then, what comes next? And we thought about it sort of from a more holistic approach. Like if Giant is the harm that we're doing to each other, then Tree is the harm that we're doing to nature, and then Breathe is the third part, which we're in like sort of prototyping production phase of, where we want to offer sort of a meditation on humanity. What brings us together? What are some of the possible solutions out there, and what are the conflicts that obviously go with those as well? And it's a mixture of the two pieces of Giant and Tree, where we become the little girl who survives the incident that happens in Giant, but we witness her full lifestyle, or for her full lifespan rather, just like you do in Tree. So we're pretty much mixing the two.
Cool.
But so there's a nice little graph that Devin Dolan created that basically shows the user or participant, sort of their role in the story, where observer passive rather was what Giant was. You didn't have a body.
Yep.
And you weren't actively involved in the story. We wanted to change that. With Tree, we wanted you to be participant active. So you have a presence, and you are the protagonist, and the technology wasn't available in 2015, 2016, but was just becoming available, with Oculus touch controllers, with Vive, with Epic Games and Unity being able to come out with, tools that made it easier, with iKinema, who's one of our partners, making it so that you could puppet these rigs. And it's that sense of sort of like not having to also burden people with instructions for, this is what you do, make sure you click these buttons and go over to this space. The thing that was nice about Tree is we give you a seed of the Kapok tree, the tree that you become. You plant it in a pot of soil, you put the headset on, and you grow. And as far as
why don't you actually walk people through the whole experience in a sort of ideal form, from the time you walk into the room?
Sure. So, if possible, we've shown it in a lot of different environments, but the setup we have here at RGA, you're in this sort of like green, sort of dark green room, and it's filled with plants to already.
And you're in the real world now. This is a physical prop setup.
Yes, this is actual reality, meat space. So you enter the room, you're greeted by a docent, or one of us, and we give you a bowl that is filled with Kapok seeds, and we say, take the seed and plant it in the soil. This is the first part of your transformation into becoming a tree in the Amazon, in the Peruvian Amazon. once you plant it, just that act of feeling the dirt in your fingers is really, helps that transition that comes next. You feel more responsible for the journey that you're about to embark on. And it's important how we onboard people with this technology, because oftentimes it could be their first experience in VR. So you want to be, make it feel familiar, and make them feel very comfortable. So that as soon as they are in a place where they're more sort of open to experience something new, then it can be a lot more rewarding of an experience in general.
Totally.
I think oftentimes people mostly are just concerned with, what's inside the headset. Is the frame rate right? Is the sound, does the sound come through clear? And those are both really important, but the other elements are also super important when it comes to just this sort of invisible components for the storytelling.
So the audience member walks into this beautiful installation that is reminiscent of a jungle. They get a seed, they put it in some dirt, and then what happens?
So then we give them the sub pack, another one of our partners. They've been really great about helping us with sort of the sound design stuff as well. But putting the sub pack on and then putting on the headset, and we've used a bunch of different headsets. We've mostly been touring with the Vive when we first started, because we had a VR for Impact grant from HTC. But
thank you, HTC.
There we go. And for us, it's also important that we're working on, because our goal is to show this project to as many people as possible. And once you put on the headset, then we ask people we tell them to look up, and you see this God ray piercing through the soil. And then with that, because
you start underground,
you
right? Like the VR experience, you're
take a deep breath, and that's sort of the final piece of instructions, or sort of guidance.
Nice. And then you start to emerge from the soil, right? Hello? Oh, have we lost Winslow? Has the internet failed us? Or has his phone died? That was really good. The experience of doing Tree for the first time was pretty spectacular. While he's figuring it out, I'll just give the rest of it. So you start to emerge from the soil, and you slowly grow up as this tree. And they used a bunch of interesting haptics. They used wind. They used heat to tell the story of you becoming a tree, and then deforestation starts to happen, and the forest around you catches on fire. And you actually start to feel the heat of the forest as it burns, and you smell. I think they would light like a match and blow it out, so you'd smell, burnt wood, and then you're engulfed in flames. So very similar to the end of Giant, but very impactful. And I think it's one of the amazing things about VR and immersive art and entertainment in general is that you get to embody different things. So actually becoming a tree. So as you move your arms around, you move the branches of the tree. And it's pretty spectacular to feel like you've become something that is impossible for you to ever be. It's not like you're another person, you're a whole nother organism, which is very much like marshmallow laser feasts in the eyes of the animal. Again, a great example of VR's ability to transform you. You are back. Hey, handsome.
Okay. Hey, thanks. You're looking pretty styling as well.
I was just giving the rest of the description of Tree, and I think we've basically covered it. You're engulfed in flames. You've got this great sensory input of fire and the smell of burnt wood, and the ground is rumbling beneath you. It's pretty engaging all of your senses. So I saw it at Sundance, which was where it premiered. You worked with Jakob Kutz-Steensen, who we had on the forum a couple weeks ago, and is a good friend, and I love his work. And that was the first time I ever saw anything that he did in VR. And maybe that was his first VR project, in fact, was it?
I don't think it was his first, no, because he had some other ones, but I think it was his first project to he was mostly doing the art circuit, but this was the first for the more sort of film-based Sundance stuff.
Yeah.
And it was more of like, I think, a linear narrative versus sort of more of an open world exploring. Yeah, we were really fortunate to be able to have Jacob come on as our art director, our environmental art lead. Our whole team was really fantastic. We were also fortunate enough to be able to work with Eric Anderson, who now is doing projects for Meow Wolf. Amazingly talented, Unreal. They're both super talented Unreal artists. And also Shin and Yadan from MIT Media Lab, who helped us with like the haptics. And the project. What's nice about the project is as new technology develops, we're starting to incorporate new things. We worked with a company called O Widgets that we met in Tianjin, China last year, who does our fully automated scent delivery system.
Oh, nice. You're not just lighting a match and blowing it out anymore. You've got.
So that was what we had at Sundance, and that was
Yeah.
I had an idea of like, there's nothing quite like a chemical reaction of like the burning wood is something that we're so accustomed to knowing is equals like burning smells equal danger. It's
Yeah.
not something we even think about. Actually, we don't think about it because of the olfactory just goes directly to our sensing systems. Instead of having to intellectualize it, we immediately know that we feel the danger, and that was
Yeah.
really important. Is that in the storytelling of Tree is that you're feeling things. There's more intuition than there is intellectual or making it so it's an intellectual interaction exchange with the project.
So the reception was even bigger for Tree than Giant. I felt like I feel like people really responded to it, and I think that's reflected in if you go to the website for Tree. I mean, it's just overwhelming how many places you've toured this thing, and I think that's partly because it's a really strong project, but I also think it's because that was a priority for you and the team. You really made that happen. And I want to find out how you made that happen, the challenges that you faced, how you overcame them, what you've learned, advice you could give for someone else that wants to take their project and really push it out there and show people.
Sure. So I think that, these are really important things to consider when making a project. There's a lot of factors. It wasn't just one thing that helped us, bring this to life. It was like dozens, really. And if you go to treeofficial.com, you can see more about the project, but also see the team and the partners that we worked with. And that's an evolving list. And, we've brought on new partners in the last 6 months from that, because we keep, involving different aspects and, even times retroactively. We worked with Perforce as our versioning control software, which is really important to have, work with teams in Unreal to all be sort of, checking in, checking out different levels. We brought them in, maybe 8 months ago as our partner. So it's like it's never too late. But first and foremost is the idea of the project, and asking the question: is this the most important, or is VR the best way, or AR, to tell the story? Is a traditional film, does it make more sense? Would a narrator telling a traditional film do better for the cause that you're thinking about? Also, is it something that is linear? Is it something that has a beginning and an end? Or is it something that's more like Tilt Brush, which is, sort of a sandbox, a creation tool, something that's more world building, exploratory? There are a lot of important things. And, especially when we talk to people who, want us to help them with projects, or when we get client work, or when NGOs approach us, they're incredibly vague, because I just don't think there's that much familiarity with how to tell these stories or what the steps are. They tell you, this is what we want to do. How much is it going to cost? Or how much time is it going to take? Or, I'm like, I have about 1 million questions for you before we can get
right.
close to
Yeah.
that. I would say, the idea is the most important thing. And then it's a question of, what does this idea look like? Is it realistic? Is it something that's more, of a caricature, more stylized? What is that? What are the points of interactivity? What's the most important thing? Also, always, I would say 110% of the time, less is more when it comes to this. How do we tell something that, can we tell the story in 5 minutes? Can we tell it in 10 minutes? As soon as you go over 12 minutes, then you're just entering in a sort of a different realm of VR that it's possible, but it's also going to become more expensive. really a lot more time consuming, and you might lose your audience, and it might be also
Well, and for
difficult.
event-based things like Giant and Tree, like you distributed Giant through Within, but I really feel like the experience is best had in the installation context. So those shorter times make more sense for that as well, right? Because you have to get people through, and so that's
Exactly
the kind of
case. Yeah.
like insights that I'm really wanting to pull from you is like how, because you must have this thing down to like a science now, like shipping the stuff, like dealing with like customs and getting the carnet filled out right when you're moving equipment across borders. Like, give me the whole rundown. Like, if I come to you and I'm like, hey, I want to exhibit Tree somewhere, what's the whole checklist, and how have you like built that into something that is really repeatable? Because it must be quite dialed in by now.
It is, but we also want to make sure that the sort of the look and feel is custom to the venue. Like we're talking right now with Singapore about how to show in a venue there, and they have their own artist renderings. So basically, we tell them what we have a tech writer, which says all the equipment that we need, and if they have any of it, then there's cost savings there. Mostly if they have a VR headset, a VR ready computer, which is basically a 980 Ti, a 1070, or a 2070 and up, and oftentimes they do. They're like, there's a university that's willing to help, so we're always trying to see if make everyone's life easier than having to ship everything out. Oftentimes, it's still the circus mentality where we bring it with us, because anything that goes through customs, when we showed Giant in Norway, the gear got sent to France and then Norway, and then it's held at Norway, and then got sent back to New York, and then got sent to Amsterdam, and then back, and we never saw it. So we had to rely on the kindness of strangers out there to help us with the gear. So yeah, always bring your own stuff if you can, but really think about what's the most cost-effective way to show it. Also, are there any other places in that country or city that are also willing to see it? That way you're not spending all your time traveling, a piece of that showing and then, going back. We've definitely expanded our team so that we have dedicated technicians and docents in different places that can show the project, because it's just after, we didn't say no in the beginning. We wanted to show it to as many places as possible, and that was really fortuitous when it came to making connections and just seeing other work as well, being inspired by other artists. But it was it started just really taking a toll on people health-wise. People didn't think we lived in our cities anymore, and it became an issue. But yeah, I mean, you develop systems that work for you, and like ultimately we also had this in IMAX, and we would love to show this in much longer places. We've shown it to about 40,000 people, which is good numbers for LBE based things. But when it comes to say a YouTube video about conservation, those could have easily millions, but will they have the same amount of impact, or immersion?
Yeah, when you think about the word of mouth too, when people see it, they're probably going to talk about it, and they're going to feel it in a visceral way. And yeah, I think impact is obviously much harder to measure, but I think it's much greater than watching a YouTube video in a small window. So you've done what, like it looks like over
it's becoming easier to set up now instead of having to spend a whole day. Yeah, so we've probably 150 different places for Giant and Tree, and probably Tree has been about 100.
And do you feel like that's paid off? Because like that is such an amount of effort, and I think it's like you've done something different than what a lot of artists do, which a lot of artists, it's about making the thing, and then they'll maybe do a festival premiere, and then honestly they're so exhausted by the time they get there that they're just sort of like they need to go into recovery mode, and then they're on to the next project. And what y'all have done that I think is really smart is somehow you've summoned the energy and strength to put as much, if not even more, energy into actually getting the thing out into the world, and to have it continue to evolve along that path, which I think is really commendable, and I think it's what more artists ought to do. So thinking back, has it paid off? Like, do you feel like that's been a good move, and would you recommend it to other people?
Yeah, I mean, so that really depends on the project. I think for Tree, it's becoming more relevant. It's this unfortunate situation where as we start to acknowledge the effects of deforestation, then it's more of a, a topic that is, in our everyday life. And so because of that, it's now, at first it was, at film festivals, then it was at tech festivals, and then it was at climate change festivals. Now it's more at like these government or, cultural events, because we've seen sort of where the topics of not just VR have started permeating into our culture, but really, topics of climate change, of awareness. And so for us, we're seeing that it's people are more interested in having it at their event or at their conference, summit, festival, university, whatever it might be. So for us, I think it was worth it, because we got to meet so many great people along the way, and also see how all these different people are perceiving VR, what the future could be, and how how do we show it, how do we tell these stories in in a spatially, how do we involve the participant in a way that can be most effective. I think as far as like user experience goes, like I've seen thousands of people, their reactions. At what point do they say, oh wow, or what point could we fine tune the sound more so that they are seeing this this animal happen on the screen, or there's just so much of this is about personal perception. And so you're never going to be able to make an experience that is for something for everybody, but we try to make something that didn't that, because it doesn't have a language, because there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's really available there's something for everybody in it. And we've kept developing since the beginning. We've probably had like 50 different versions of Tree as well. And now it's fully automated. So the scents are automated, all the heat, wind, and vibrations are automated. We used to have 3 computers for everything, and lug 60-pound computers wherever we go. Now we do it all on a laptop, and we have these breakout boxes that we use. So I mean,
that's awesome.
yeah, I mean, there's no other way to do it. I guess if you want to get experience, you can watch talks, of people like us, talking heads talking about their experiences. But really, sorry everyone out there. Really, I just got a Slack message. Really, the best way to do it is by experiencing it, doing it yourself, making the mistakes, and getting out there, meeting the people who are doing it. Break stuff. You got to break stuff to make stuff. And what is the story that you want to tell? Why is that important? And how can technology really bring that to life? But the technology, again, should be kind of taking a back seat. It should be invisible. It should be, it's an illusion that you're creating, and it can be a really effective one if done properly. But I would also say there's so many times where Milica and I were like, okay, like we're done, like this is too much work, like we just want to give up. And then all of a sudden we get an email with someone whose response was like, this really inspired me to quit my job and want to be involved in immersive storytelling, or we'd really like to feature you guys in this event because we think it's going to be really impactful. As soon as we see people's reactions and the responses, it's really, it sounds cheesy, but that's what really makes it all worthwhile. Because we're not really doing it at the end of the day. We're trying to create something bigger, and we're trying to create really push sort of the medium forward, because the high tide lifts all ships. And people say that about other types of art, but I think in VR, because it's still, the market is so nascent, it's more important now than ever to really get people involved, get people inspired. And Renee, the work that you guys are doing, I think, is super important, because you're linking all these different people, but you're also sort of the lightning rod of what's happening, what's the new, and why should people care about it.
Yeah, well, appreciate you saying that. And that's a segue to the last little bit. We only got a couple more minutes. Maybe your just quick overview on where you think the industry is now and where you think it's headed, and just give me a temperature gauge on what you think is hot right now. Where's the heat in the industry?
Well, yeah, not for actually these glasses right here. I don't know. Is the sound quality pretty good?
I think the sound is good. The internet is not so good.
Hopefully, my internet connection didn't shut off. Can you still see me?
Yeah, you're coming through a little bit. Keep going.
Hot diggity dog.
I'm gonna cut your video. Just give us your parting thoughts. I'm still here. I can hear you perfectly now. I killed your video, so I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, great. Because once you pair it with your phone, it allows you to do spatial. Okay.
Oh, cool. So the audio is coming through your headset right now.
Okay. I think it's great. I think AR is the next big sort of hype cycle, AR and AI. But I think we also need to be careful about what that means.
Winslow, you were so breaking up.
Yeah,
I think
these are.
I think that's like an ironic way to end the interview is with technology totally crapping out on us.
Lenses put into here, and now I don't use.
Yeah. I think Winslow just got sucked into a robot void. Thank you everyone for joining us. Winslow's work can be seen Tree. Oh, hold on. I'll add the links to his work in the show notes. Glasses. The Bose glasses are quite cool. But Winslow, if you can hear me, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're about to go on another trip exhibiting Tree somewhere else around the world. And I'm really excited for your next project, Breathe. I hope it comes out at the festival circuit next year. I know it's been percolating for a while. And again, thank you everyone for tuning in. Tomorrow, we've got another one of these with Kent Bai. Kent is the host of Voices of VR and is a good friend and one of the other few people that live in Portland, Oregon that are part of the XR world. So he's a good friend. And I hope to see you all there. All right. Until next time, keep it immersive. Cheers.